Can we find freedom coexisting in larger cyclical patterns and cycles? And what is our relationship to these things? How do we live through these things? Here with us to share some of his own personal explorations into the nature of free will and causality in his first excellent presentation. Max DeArmon.
I just want to say first off that I'm really grateful to be here with all of you, and it's really amazing learning from everybody here, and I'm just totally blown away every moment. The presentation was amazing, by the way. So first I'm just going to start with a little clip from the Matrix.
That was little.
Here he is at last, Neo, the one himself, right? And the legendary Morpheus. And Trinity, of course, si belle qu'elle me fait souffrir. I have heard so much you honor me. Please sit, join us. This is my wife, Persephone. Something to eat? Drink? Of course, such things are contrivances like so much here, for the sake of appearances. No, thank you. Yes, of course. Who has time? Who has time? But then if we do not ever take time, how can we ever have time? Château Aubryon, 1959. Magnificent wine. I love French wine. Like I love the French language. I have sampled every language. French is my favorite. Fantastic language. Especially to curse with. Nom de Dieu, de putain de bordel de merde, de saloperie, de connard, d'enculé de ta mère, c'est wiping your ass with silk. I love it. You know why we are here. I am a trafficker of information. I know everything I can. The question is, do you know why you are here? We are looking for the keymaker. Oh yes, it is true. The keymaker, of course. But this is not a reason, this is not a why. The keymaker himself is very nature as a means, it is not an end. And so, to look for him is to be looking for a means to do what?
You know the answer to that question.
But do you? You think you do, but you do not. You are here because you were sent here. You were told to come here and then you obeyed. It is, of course, the way of all things. You see, there is only one constant, one universal. It is the only real truth. Causality. Action, reaction, cause, and effect.
Everything begins with choice.
No, wrong. Choice is an illusion created between those with power and those without.
So this is the type of thing that I think about my whole life. And I have to admit that my entire free will and choice, probably to the point of arrogance. It's the basis of the American dream. Each individual, regardless of their circumstances, has the ability to achieve anything they set out to achieve. Then I went to college. And during my time in college, I was bombarded with all the reasons why causality was the victor. This discussion will focus specifically on how individual consciousness is shaped, expanded, and limited by causality, and raises questions about how we can use our free will to participate in shaping our consciousness. Quick clarification of terms and context of this discussion. Consciousness is our self-awareness, awareness of self. It's the periphery of the individual's reality, experience, beliefs, perspective, and worldview. Different traditions classify consciousness differently, but for the sake of this talk, I'm using it as self-awareness. This awareness can expand or contract depending on what we believe. Free will is the individual's ability to make intentional conscious choices that shape their own consciousness. And causality means the individual's consciousness is a product of the environments external to them. From a sociological perspective, namely the paradigm of symbolic interactionism, reality is socially constructed. Humans experience a socially constructed reality. This reality is represented by social norms, behaviors, beliefs, thought patterns, the way in which we interact with each other, and most importantly, through our constantly evolving language. Children are born into a world, into a mental reality that has already been built for them. There are pre-existing established sets of belief about what is considered to be real or truth and what is heresy. Children are then, through a process of socialization, taught to view the world based on the thought communities they are born into. From a psychological perspective, there are root causes to our psychological limitations. Freud attributes the situations with our parents in childhood as the root causes. Groff looks heavily at the individual's perinatal experiences during pregnancy and delivery. Jung digs deep into the world of collective unconscious and the archetypes that influence human experience. Most of Western psychology attributes psychological states to be causal, whether it be personal experiences or transpersonal ones. Rupert Sheldrake's theory of morphic resonance attributes non-physical fields with having a great deal to do with our shape, form, memory, and so on. We can also talk about greater systems of influence. In physics, according to Sir Isaac Newton, every action has an equal and opposite reaction, or simply karma, as ancient Indian philosophers call it. From a planetary archetypal perspective, Richard Tarnas in Cosmos and Psyche has beautifully mapped out how our collective psyche correlates with the alignments of planetary archetypes manifested through artistic, intellectual, and rebellious revolutions during the course of Western history, as well as how these archetypes correlate with the stages within an individual's lifespan. These examples, and there are many more, show how our awareness of self is being shaped in major ways by causality. Does our free will even serve a useful purpose? In addition to each paradigm created, even if it's much broader and more expansive than the last, it sets up some sort of boundaries around the individual's consciousness and self-awareness. This brings us to the power of belief. There are some striking theories and scientific findings about the power of belief. Most of our beliefs are deep within our subconscious and have been planted there by people in our lives with cognitive authority. These beliefs create limitations and/or expand our self-awareness. People used to believe in a geocentric universe, therefore their awareness of self was from that perspective. When these beliefs changed to a heliocentric belief, their awareness of self expanded into the solar system. Now with our new galactic beliefs, our awareness of self is expanding even greater. But most of us have never left the Earth, and all of us can only imagine what the Milky Way looks like from the outside, based on our observations of other galaxies. In a sense, it's only our belief in certain truth that either expands or limits our self-awareness. What we believe changes our consciousness. Neo was not the one at the beginning of the Matrix. It was Morpheus's belief in him that led him to even consider himself to be the one. In his book, The Protestant Ethic, Max Weber, one of the forefathers of sociology, attributes the entire Industrial Revolution to what he calls the Protestant ethic. His theory was that the Protestant Reformation formed certain beliefs about working hard in order to be successful in the eyes of God, and that belief led to vast economic and industrial growth of the Protestant people in Europe and North America. Whether or not this is actually the whole truth about their success is not as important as the observation that when the people's core beliefs change, their actions and behaviors change to follow those beliefs. The placebo effect is a scientific testament to the power of belief. In Bruce Lipton's book, The Biology of Belief, he discusses research where patients in control groups are given knee surgery and others are given a fake knee surgery, and both groups no longer need assistance in walking. Can we use our free will to change our consciousness that has mostly been shaped by outside sources our whole lives? The conscious mind offers us free will meaning we are not just victims of our programming. Neo was not the one. He had to make choices in order to become the one. Yogis have been teaching for thousands of years that you can create your inner world and outer world by consciously choosing what you believe and what you think, or simply what you don't think. Through learning how to restrain the mind and control it instead of being controlled by it, you can co-create your world. Even in this sense, you're not entirely creating your world, but also using conscious intention to restrict the sensory information that your subconscious is receiving. In doing so, you are choosing to mold your subconscious in certain ways. You are literally stopping the karmic impressions by choosing not to participate in cause and effect. When someone curses at you, you choose not to react, stopping the cycle. There are practical methods explained in details in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. These methods are sometimes referred to as the 8 limbs of yoga or Ashtanga yoga. I started to apply these theories of yoga and, based on the observations of my own karmic cycles, create a system of intentional consumption. By consciously choosing my environment, the information I consume, the food I eat, the music I listen to, the friends I keep, the books I read, and virtually everything in my world, I am getting in between cause and effect and consciously choosing the effect I want. I can't stop cause and effect, but I can choose the causes and then, in some ways, know the effects or at least experience them. I started by taking inventory of my life and made conscious changes that were aligned with my vision to produce the effects I wanted to see in my life. I found that one of the greatest tools from the sutras was pratyahara, or sense withdrawal. This practice was simply consuming less information in all forms. It created a great deal of space in my awareness, and I started to notice more subtle things. It's like emptying a bucket full of stagnant, polluted old water and allowing space for fresh, new, clean water to filter in. After this deep cleansing of my body and mind, I started noticing the results of my choices. The results are qualitative and subjective data that I've collected over the course of 3 years. The main limitation being I have no other data to compare them with. I documented my dreams, thoughts, ideas, along with outward manifestations, including synchronistic moments and deliberate actions in the external world, and how in some ways they were related to the conscious choices I was making. These conscious choices that I used my free will to change had a direct effect on my consciousness. I began to be aware of things that were always there that I had never noticed, within myself and the external world. I experienced a decrease in fear, doubt, and frustration, and an increase of memory, awareness, and comprehension. My interaction with the external world became increasingly more harmonious, and I noticed that my dreams were affected dramatically. My dreams went from being violent, chaotic, frightening, and completely foreign to very coherent, familiar, and sometimes precognitive, astral, and lucid. In one experiment, I concentrated on one quality each night for a week with full intention. I noticed that each night the theme of my dreams correlated with the quality I chose to focus on. These examples, and there are many more, reinforce my beliefs about free will and my ability to change my awareness of self intentionally. But more importantly, there were things I documented that were manifesting in patterns over the years I had not intended. Things that couldn't be explained based on my conscious choices. I noticed that certain friends would cycle in and out of my life during this periods each year. One friend of mine would start to contact me in late September and spend more and more time with me through the winter. Then I wouldn't see her again until next summer. New romantic relationships would start to flower each year in June, 4 years in a row, and dwindle as the fall equinox would approach. Although I have maintained friendships with all of them, the swell of love would bloom around the summer solstice and come to a closure around fall equinox. I started to feel as if I was in sync with the natural seasons the earth goes through. I could see external manifestations start to rise around the spring equinox, and as the sunlight would retreat from each day after the summer solstice, so would I into a more inward contemplation. Maybe these things are easy easily explained when you look at nature and see the same things taking place. From the spring through the late summer, things grow in an outward way, then they start to shed their external manifestations and go in during the winter months. As these questions were arising, I stumbled upon the I Ching calendar that breaks the year up into yin and yang periods, internal and external cycles. This system seemed to fit the experience I was having to some degree. I also documented reoccurring dreams around the same time period each year. They weren't the exact same dream, but the same theme or symbology. A few weeks before my birthday in 2011, I stumbled upon the Shivananda Yoga Vedanta Center in New York, which led to a full year of learning Vedanta philosophy. 1 year later, a few weeks before my birthday, in 2012, I was in Berkeley randomly wandering in the streets feeling isolated when I stumbled upon the Vedanta Society. I had literally just moved to Berkeley a few days prior. I saw they were having meditation at 6:30. I looked at my phone and it was 6:15. I stood there in awe and felt complete comfort of the interconnectivity of everything. This example encourages me to have faith and surrender to greater energy forces. I was across the country in across the entire country in a foreign land, questioning what I was doing with my life and the choices I had made, when something much greater than me was revealed as a reminder that everything is connected. I know we all have these experiences, and this may simply be explained as synchronicity, but what catches my attention the most is that these examples seem to have cyclical and annual patterns that I think may have something to do with our position to the sun and the cycles of the moon. These situations, the ones that are clearly manifesting through me, are the ones that humble me the most. The word Islam literally means submission or surrender. In Vedanta philosophy, they talk about surrendering to your big self or infinite consciousness, which is the eternal aspect of ourselves, and not letting the little self, the individual ego, which is the temporal aspect of ourselves, get in the way of our destiny. It's an unfolding of our true creative nature in harmony with the whole. I think this is inclusive of both free will and causality, because we must choose to go with the flow and follow where life is taking us, or choose to be resistant and follow our ego and where it leads us. Either way, we do have a choice. In some ways, joining PCC is happening at the exact moment when my consciousness is starting to have a different awareness of the universe and my place within it. Through studying yoga, Vedanta, and other esoteric wisdoms, along with reading Cosmos and the Psyche, transpersonal theories, and lectures in Brian's class, I'm starting to not only have knowledge of the universe as a self-organizing system, but to comprehend and experience its creative power manifesting itself through me. Even my free will, my ability to make conscious choices that change my life and the world around me, is a product of the creative intelligence of the universe. So I would love to hear comments or questions, because you guys love to hear your reflections, if there are any.
I thought the presentation was excellent, but what I'm struck by right this moment is just your passion, for life and for learning, and just I love the way that you crank through all these different things, that you had gotten into, and I like your polymathic passion, and kind of I feel a sense of quest and purpose, and intentionality as you were talking about in terms of your life. That's inspiring.
Thank you.
I also really appreciate your sharing. And what I was feeling as you were presenting, you brought up Rupert Sheldrake at the beginning, and then you were looking at how some of your experiences were fitting into patterns and cycles. And I was also thinking of it maybe as, because you're being so intentional about all of this, that you're setting up your own morphic fields and becoming stronger each year at the same time, for example, because of you're creating it kind of. But that's just another factor possibly influencing what you're experiencing.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's what Lydia.
Someone choose. Someone choose.
I think Lydia's first.
Free will.
Causing my own causality. I just really struck by your ability to articulate something so complex in a subjective sense, and I just really appreciate that you've dedicated, because some things it seems like it takes years of dedication to be able to give that kind of articulation to it, and it's a gift. It's like, to me, like your presentation was just a gift to me, I felt, because of the way that you were able to articulate the relationship and you've thought through and lived through and even experimented through and documented through living the relationship of trying to understand the relationship between free will and causality. So I just really appreciate that. And then to hear that now arriving at a different dimension of consciousness where now it's not just your free will and causality, but that the universe within you is expressing this dance between having a manifestation of free will and this insanely coherent intelligence, multi-dimensional intelligence, which is the way I feel it, that is constantly operating and that we are operating within. I don't know, it's just really beautiful to, I just met you and I just feel really grateful that you're here. And I feel really grateful with what you shared. I don't know why.
Oh, thank you. All right, Thea.
Yeah, I really appreciate you framing it that way. It feels really good when you've presented it. And also, I'm curious because you grew up on the East Coast and you're from the Bronx, and you I assume you've been living in this pretty kind of urban environment. And a lot of times, without the continuous connection to nature necessarily, the human structures can really begin to put themselves into us in ways that make it seem like things are determined or we have to respond to things. I'm curious if you could elaborate a little bit on some of your own personal transformations, like how were you living, how did you grow up in that sense, and then what began to change with you at different levels when you started to see the light of these things?
It probably has something to do with Saturn return. That definitely made a lot of sense to me. Around 2009, I guess, I started. I mean, it had been coming through in information, but I really had to change my actual life. My ideal self and my actual self were not aligned, and it was creating a lot of chaos in my world, internally and externally. And so I started to implement one thing at a time. Like I said, I took inventory and said, okay, here's all the things that aren't working, and made little corrections at each one. I mean, moving here and being part of this community is part of that. And I've been kind of leading up to this. But I started doing meditation and yoga, and I actually lost about 70 pounds. I was really unhealthy. I grew up a vegetarian, and my parents did meditation, but on my own journey, just was doing kid stuff. So
we've done it all.
But yeah, it's literally been a physical manifestation, but the thing that really blows my mind is the awareness. Just even from Brian's lectures, I've only had a few lectures with him, and just even how that changes my awareness of myself within the whole system. So each moment, we're all learning these new things or becoming more aware of ourselves.
Just a quick comment. I'm always fascinated to hear and see how someone finds their way to PCC, and every path seems to be unique. And it strikes you that the road is filled with clues that you can follow, and that the first time you find a book that opens up your mind and heart, that it makes you hungry for more, and you end up at the surrender to infinite consciousness. tell you like where to go for the clues that led you here. I also think that your personal journey, and particularly the meeting point between choice, free will, and then the morphic field in which we find ourselves that has a karmic spirit to it, and a cause and effect, an attitude. I'm curious if you have a vision, and you don't have to, be afraid for your answer, but if you have a vision as to where you see that intersection move into the future, how? Because I feel we are collectively sort of groping. We're just in the early stages of learning to utilize our free will in this beautiful relationship and dance with something cosmic that is coming through us.
Mm-hmm. So, if I have a vision, personal vision, or
First start with
collective?
personal, just the way you've done your presentation.
There is visions in there, but I am afraid to.
Yeah.
I'm still afraid to fully. Yeah. I mean, I really like the acorn theory. I think that explains it the best. James Hillman's acorn theory, that something is pulling us towards our actualization, that we contain the form and shape of our destiny.
Yeah.
I really think that, and I just learned that recently. I was like, yes, that's it. That's exactly it. But,
Just want to say thank you so much for sharing that vision and what you've learned about the world, and keep sharing it. I can empathise so much with this, what you're talking about, these gifts in a sense that you're granted by the universe, these amazing synchronicities, and that which you could not have imagined, the beauty that the universe yields to you when you somehow flow with it. And just I want to say thanks and respect for that, and keep sharing it, because so many people don't see it like that.
Thank
Keep
you.
sharing what you found. Go well on your path.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, like everyone else has said, thanks for telling us your story and presenting it in such a compelling way. I think you're focusing on exactly the right issue, which is the relationship between freedom and relationship, right? Like and in terms of the evolution of the cosmos, it seems like one way to describe that would be the gradual transformation of freedom from one form into another. So different forms of freedom are being achieved in each stage of the universe's evolution, right? And modern consciousness has moved through a stage of freedom realized as almost like a state of war against what we're in relationship with, right? Like if you think of in the tradition, like Kant would define the relationship of freedom to like feelings and relationship as one of dominance. Like we have to use freedom to dominate over our feelings and not listen to our feelings, or not be involved in the flow of reality, where it's action, reaction, action, reaction. And I think what you've highlighted for us is the way that the only way for freedom to coexist with feelings and with relationship and causality is for it to be infinite, or to consider this as one infinite system, where freedom and feeling, freedom and relationship are, dancing together. That's a good metaphor. We're evolving together, co-evolving. So I think you've made that picture clearer in my imagination through what you've been sharing with us. So that I have that one to you. Thanks.
Thanks, that's a good insight. You just took me further on.
One more question?
Well, I would like to say that I really admire the way that you highlighted the role of practice in philosophy. I'm personally very interested in conditions that are generative of philosophical insight, generally speaking. And a lot of philosophers privilege sort of writing and certain particular forms of language. But I really like the way that you have continued in a practice that's very old in the West of incorporating spiritual exercises into one's philosophical development. So I see you in a lineage with the Stoics and the Pyrrhonic skeptics and other, it's a to me a very noble part of philosophy that has been largely neglected, I think, in modern philosophy. So I see what you're doing as very cutting edge, and I like the way that the way you took a light touch, I felt, with your biography. If we talk about ourselves, it can easily become kind of narcissist theater. But I like the way that you mobilized your biography as a philosophical insight generator for us. So you handled that really well, I think. So I want to congratulate you on that.
Thank you.